The integral success principle states that the more truths you include in your approach to any given situation, the greater your chances of success. So in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what that means, explain all about how it works and why it's so important. And as part of that, I'm going to give you examples across 5 different areas. So there'll be relationships and dating, sport, business sales, health, and job seeking. We'll go through all 5 of those. And don't worry if 1 or 2 of those topics don't interest you. By the time you've seen how we apply that principle to all of them, you'll be much more practiced in how you can apply that to whatever it is that you want to achieve success in. And on top of all that, we'll also play a game of Battleships. Kind of. So instead of having 1 shot to get a success, I've actually now got 5 shots at success. I'd like to share something with you that will give it even more power and leverage, and that is around doubling up and what I call dimension multiples, which means I've gone from that 1 square of possibility to 100 times more chance of getting a job. The principle just doesn't just apply, it's actually incredibly brutal in terms of you absolutely get punished if you miss one of them out. So this is what makes ILP incredibly powerful. If you miss a single truth, your chances of results are absolutely down to 0. So the point here is that we're talking about fulfilling your potential. So how can you be the best human being that you can be? So the more truths you include in your approach to any given situation, the greater your chances of success. And let's start with our first example then, which is sports. And I'd like you to imagine that you run a football team. So you're in charge and you've got to decide what's important. Applying this principle then, rather than just looking at one thing, we want to get an idea of all the different things in the line that we can look at, and so that we can address them all. So in sports, in football, obvious examples is that as well as attacking, you need to defend. So it's important to focus on both of those. Now, the most famous example, perhaps also, was in the world of football, soccer, of a team not doing that would be in 2014, the Brazilian World Cup, where Brazil, the host nation, were playing Germany in the semi-final, and they thought they could win, or at least the sense was that their view was they could win solely by attacking. And of course, they didn't really pay any attention to defence. And as some of you will know, they were well and truly beaten. I think it was 7-1 in the end, and about 5-0 by half-time. And after 20 minutes, the game was all over. Brazilian fans were crying in the stands, understandably, because they're passionate about their sport. And they didn't apply this principle. They only looked at one thing. They only looked at attack rather than looking at attack and defence. And you can expand that out. So there's 2 things. If you approach 2 rather than 1, you've got twice as much chance of success. But you can also look at other areas to see how you can broaden this. So you might want to think about strategy being important, but not at the expense of intuitive decisions in the moment being made. You might think that teamwork is important, which it is, but not at the expense of individual brilliance. In addition to skills, you might also think about physical fitness. And as well as physical fitness, you might also pay attention to mental fitness. So there's all kind of truths that relate to the game of football, regardless of any sport really, whether it's European football or American football. This principle applies across all kinds of areas, so you can see what are the truths that apply to the game. Make sure that you're applying them and improve or maximize your chances of success accordingly. So a kind of metaphor that we can use for this is kind of like getting little squares. Rather than having 1 square, you want to get as many squares in a row as you can. And the metaphor I'm going to use is that of the board game Battleships. This is it. I'll just bring up some images on screen here. So if you're not familiar with this, it's a 2-player game, and each player has a grid of something like 10 squares, 10 by 10. So 100 squares numbered across the top, 1 to 10, and A to J down the side. So you've got a reference. Any individual square on that board has a reference point, like B3 or D7 or something like that. And the idea is that you have each player positions 5 theoretical ships, which are 1 square by 2 squares, or 1 square by 3, by 4, and by 5, different sizes, and they position them, and you have to guess what position your opponent's boats are positioned in. So you call out some positions like H6, and your opponent will say hit and miss. So you're probably familiar with this game. Well, this is how we can think about the integral success principle and how we apply it, because in the same way you're looking at squares. So Brazil, in that instance that I gave you, looked at just one square when they could have been looking at 2 squares. And probably there are a few more as well that they could have looked at if they'd taken a more scientific and all-inclusive approach to what they were doing. So Battleships is a great metaphor. We can start to use that and the idea of squares to develop our understanding of this principle. So if we take the example of health, you can then start to see, if you're looking, as anybody might do, a reasonable objective to want to be healthy, what are the squares that might be relevant to that? Well, the first 2 obvious ones are diet and exercise. Now, both of those words happen to be particularly charged. The idea of diet, ugh. The idea of exercise, don't fancy that either. Horrible words. But so we can kind of reword those to be how we move and what we consume. So those are 2 truths. So if you think about somebody just applying one of those, let's say they focus on movement and exercise, well, that will get them some results. But if they do that and they don't pay any attention to their diet, or what they consume, what they eat and drink, then there's much less chance they're going to get success in their aim for getting healthy. And of course, the other way around, if people only focus on what they eat and drink, but they're not actually moving their body very much, that also is going to inhibit the chances of optimum health as well. So we've got 2 squares there, but we can also see what else might be relevant. There's an obvious one, which is sleep. That's incredibly important for health, might even be the first building block that we approach. And then you can see, you go along that line, you've got sleep, what you eat and drink, exercise/movement, and then something else might be in there like the quality of the air that you breathe. If you're in a town with no pollution that's by the coast, you're going to be breathing cleaner air than if you're in the centre of a city like London or something like that. You're going to have much less air quality. You can also look at something like emotions and stress, something like that. Is lifestyle causing stress, or is it a comfortable lifestyle? And then also community, what kind of people are around you. So you've got all kinds of lifestyle factors. So if you're going to aim to achieve great health, there's all these truths in a row that you could look at to pay attention to give you greater opportunities of success. And of course, in each of those, you can then break those down further into different aspects. So you've got more dimensions coming into play now. So let's take something like sleep. The average person needs somewhere between 3 and 11 hours sleep. So the first question is, are you getting all the sleep that you want to be getting in all the hours? Second is, what time frame are they spread over? There's a theory that we're designed to be asleep between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. So to what degree are you covering that period and making sure you're getting sleep there? And also, as well as the hours, you might want to think about the quality of your sleep. Is it genuinely deep, refreshing sleep, or is it shallow, disturbed sleep? So we've got our main truths across the top for this aim of health, which is things like sleep, diet, exercise, pollution, air quality, all those kind of things. But then when we break it down into each individual bit, then we can see also that there are truths, there's sort of sub-truths that apply to each one. So all of a sudden, there are a lot of different things that we can apply to help us achieve whatever it is, in this case, health. So I hope you can start to see how we are building up the way this theory, this principle works, and how it can be applied in practice. And as part of that, as you go along, if you'd like to make any comments in the comments below to address a particular topic that's of interest to you, and you'd like my feedback on that, please feel free to do so, and I'll see if I can put any contributions in there about that topic and how I might seek to apply this principle to it. One truth to bear in mind when applying all of this is the principle of the most bang for your buck. How do you get the most bang for your buck? And essentially what this means is, how much input of a certain resource are you having to give in order to receive a certain level of success or results that you're seeing? Because it might be that something is true that it's getting you some results, it might be contributing to something, but the amount of input that's required to generate that might not be worth it. And I'll give you an example here. About 25 years ago in the 90s, I was working as support for a sales team, and one of our team had made a sale, and I said to the boss, "Hey, this is great. This guy's just got a sale. It's brilliant, isn't it? He's doing well." And the boss said to me, "No, you're kidding, aren't you? That guy's terrible. He's converting 2 out of 10. For every 10 leads we give him, he's only making 2 sales. And we have other salesmen that are making 7 sales for every 10 leads we give them." I thought, oh yeah, okay. So as that was explained, this guy, for every 10 leads he was getting, 3 of them couldn't be converted to customers. Another 2 he was converting to customers, but another 5 out of 10 leads he was completely wasting. As it happens, that salesman did actually get the sack a few weeks later, specifically because he wasn't delivering on this principle of the most bang for the company's buck. So you can see that this principle is something that needs to bear it in mind when you're applying something. Now, bear in mind also that the most bang for your buck, bang is the results and outcome that you're getting, but the buck doesn't necessarily have to be bucks in terms of money. In this instance, it was lead generations for potential customers, but it also could be your physical energy, it could be your emotional and psychic energy, it could be your time, anything like that, which is a resource that you have. It might be true that something applies to this principle because it gets results, but you might want to think, well, actually, I'm going to knock that on the head. Another example is I see with marketing a lot of the time, people get 100 visits to their website and 98 are from LinkedIn and 2 are from Facebook. And I said, well, we're putting all this time into getting into marketing on Facebook. We're getting just 2 people turn up. So we might as well stop that. So that's something to bear in mind as well. A classic example that I share when I teach this stuff, the first time I taught this was in 2014 at a workshop I was doing in Stockholm. And it relates to the time over a decade ago now when I was looking to get a job. I was job seeking. And in the first instance, I did what everybody does. I went to the local job centre in the town and looked at the boards and saw what jobs were around. Okay, nothing wrong with that. So there's our first square. You remember that Battleships analogy? There's our first square on the board, going to the job centre. Now, after a few weeks, nothing was happening, and there was a lot of demand by other people. A lot of people were looking for jobs at the time, so it's a saturated market for trying to find a job. A lot of experiences of people applying to 300 companies or something and getting no reply whatsoever. So it's quite a tough situation. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to do something about this. I've got to change this. So I applied the integral success principle. And so the first thing I thought to myself is, okay, well, what ways are there that you can get a job? So we've got one on the list already, which is going to the job centre. But also, of course, you can do online job seeking. So there are websites where you can look for a job in your town that way. So that's something else that I did, register with a website. I also knew from experience, because I'd done this in the past, that you can write to companies that you're interested in working for, the kind of job that you're looking for. You can write to them and say that you're looking for a job and ask them if they're employing, if they've got any vacancies or anything like that. Now, I know this works because I did this in the 90s. I applied, I wrote about 30 letters, got about 4 replies, and actually got a job that way. So this was something else that I did alongside the other 2 tasks. And the other thing you can do, of course, is you can ask friends. Do they know of any jobs that are going? You can see what's going by word of mouth, what you can hear on the grapevine. So there's 4. And the 5th thing I did was to register with employment agencies. So in the town you can go into, there'll be bureaus where you can register with them and they will actively try to find you a job. You'll give them all your information about what your talents and abilities, experiences are, and all that kind of thing. So there were 5 things. All of a sudden, if you think back to the battleships analogy, my 1 square has just become 5 squares. So instead of having 1 shot to get a success, I've actually now got 5 shots at success. And that still didn't work. So what I did was to then apply all 5 of those things that I was doing, not just to my hometown, but to 5 different towns. So including Letchworth, where I lived, but also going south to London, to include London, and 2 towns in between London and where I lived, and also up to Cambridge, which was the other direction on the train line. So I've now got 5 towns: Cambridge, Letchworth, Hitchin, Stevenage and London, where I'm applying all 5 of these tactics, if you like, to try and get a job. Now, if you think about it, I haven't just added 5 to 5 and made 10. I've actually multiplied 5 by 5 and got 25, because all of 5 of those techniques for getting a job are being applied to all 5 of those different towns. And now, all of a sudden, that Battleships possibility is gone from 5 squares to 25 squares. And of course, bearing in mind that I started with 1 square. So from really tiny chances, all of a sudden, the proposition of success is vastly increased. So we can see those on the chart there. There you've got the 5 types of job-seeking activity on one side, and on the other axis you've got the 5 towns in which I was applying it. And within about 3 or 4 weeks, I did get success. Actually, it was an employment agency in Cambridge that found me a job interview that I went to, and I got the job there. So this is, you can see how this can be applied to really give you leverage. And actually, another thing that I did at around the same time was to increase my sharpness physically and mentally, improved diet and things like that, so that my mind and body were much sharper. And I would say that for anybody doing that, it can't be unrealistic to say that that would give you at least a double, or if not 4 times the chance of being success at interview, because nobody wants to be employing anybody who's lethargic and low energy. So by sharpening that up, I would say that multiplied by 4 the chances of me getting a job. Now, if you consider that that would apply to any interview that I got from any of those 25 different squares, those possibilities, we're now looking at, we've kind of got an X and a Y axis, because we've got a square of 5 by 5, and we've now got a third axis to it, a depth to it, of the chances at interview. So let's say they've got 4 times better chance of being successful at interview, multiplied by the 25 possibilities that I had, which means I've gone from that 1 square of possibility to 100 times more chance of getting a job, which is essentially the only way something good was going to happen, because in that market, if I just stuck with that 1 square, I'd have been there months, if not years, with no success. And as I say, this is something that I first taught in Stockholm, and you can see from this picture here, this was the whiteboard that I was teaching it on, that rather scruffy grid there of 5 squares by 5 squares representing the 25 that I was applying to seeking a job. Now that you're starting to get a great sense of how this principle, this integral success principle, is applied, I'd like to share something with you that will give it even more power and leverage, and that is around doubling up and what I call dimension multiples. And to give you an example of that, I'm going to put you back in the driving seat again. If you will, please, I'd like you to imagine that you're the owner of a store, a retail shop, and you're on the high street, so that's your business, and you're looking to maximize your revenue and your profits. So let's say you've got 10 customers a year, and they buy from you 10 times every year, and the average amount of money that they spend with you every time they do come into your shop is $10 or £10, whatever currency it is that you work in. Now, if you were to look at those 3 aspects and double them, let's see what would happen. So let's take the average spend that somebody has. Let's say it's $10, and if you could do some things that would double that, get that up to $20, maybe you could do that through cross-selling and upselling. So you start a conversation with them, say, ask them if they've been in the store before and get a sense of their interests, and then if they purchase something, see what else they might like to go with that, and you're as I say, upselling and cross-selling, maybe you can get that average value of a sale up from $10 to $20. Let's say also you do something to improve the number of people that come into your shop. You've got 10 customers walking in every year, or let's say you want to double that as well. Maybe you could do that by doing some advertising in the paper or online, or maybe you could have somebody in the street who would hand out leaflets. Whatever it is, there might be something that you can do that you can double the amount of people coming into the shop and number of customers that you've got. Now, so that's two things. What about the third thing? Let's see, how could you improve the number of times a customer comes into your shop? Well, maybe you could do something like a membership, make them feel special. You could offer a membership, and just maybe that would double the amount of times that they buy from you, from 10 times a year to 20 times a year. So you're running the shop. Let's say you've done all those three things. Yes or no? Have you doubled your revenue? Yes or no? Yes or no? You haven't, have you? You've more than doubled it, because these three things apply to each other. So you've actually multiplied your revenue not by 2, but by 8. You've gone from 10 times 10 times 10 to 20, which is 1,000. 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000, to 20 customers a year, spending $20 each time. That's 400, and they're doing that 20 times a year. That's 8,000. So you can see we're not just adding on truths here and getting incrementally one more truth, 2, 3, 4 points. And this is, you kind of have to, with this principle generally, you kind of have to work out how you can apply it to different things in your head as best you can, get a sense of it. But this is multiplying up by 2 factors, by 2 axes. Let's say if you've got a graph, you've got an X and a Y axis, like we had with the Battleships. And actually, in this case, you're multiplying all 3. So it's kind of like you've got a Z axis as well, as you might imagine a Rubik's Cube. Again, we're talking with squares, but you were talking about much more power here when you start to multiply different factors that all relate to each other. Okay, can you see that? So again, you've got 10 times 10 is 1,000. 10 times 10 is 100. Times 10 is 1,000. But then if you double each element to 20 times 20 times 20, then you get to 8,000. Huge difference. So let's see how we can apply this to dating for relationships. What truths are there that can be included to give us the greatest chance of success, or to give you the greatest chance of success? Well, 2 obvious ones are the 2 people involved. So there's you, yourself. That's going to be a truth that's relevant to how successful you are at dating. But there's also the truth of the other person, or the people who are in front of you, the other side of the table to you at dinner. How good are you at assessing them? So rather than just focusing on yourself or just focusing on them, if you can pay attention to both, then you're covering 2 bases for what can help you be successful in the sphere rather than just one. So you might want to pay attention to how you're showing up. Are you doing the things that you'd like to be doing and expressing yourself truly? And how good are you at assessing suitability of other people? One thing there is how well do you know yourself? That's going to make it a lot easier for you to know what kind of person that you want to be with. And if you have more experience, the more experience you develop of other people, of assessing them, getting a sense of their values, what's important to them, what kind of person they are, then that's also going to help as well. So that's two possibilities across one axis. We can also look at the dating process itself. How are you finding dates to go out with? So let's say the obvious thing is you're going to join a dating website. Well, rather than join one dating website for a year, it might be worth joining 4 dating websites for 3 months, because then you can see how good they are, whether they're useful or not. Are they going to be providing you with good quality people to interact with, or are they just duds that is just a waste of time? And you might find that you will whittle that down to 2 of the 4 websites that are useful, and so you're going to persevere with those and get rid of the other 2 because they're not suitable to you, or they're just bad websites, or whatever it is. But then you can also look at what other ways are there that you can arrange dates with people. So you've got that one truth there, that you're using the online websites. Another one might be that you ask your friends, who do they know who's single that you might be able to go out with. So that's, whether you like that approach or not, is kind of, it's not relevant to the point. If you don't, then don't do it. But it might be something that you can apply and give yourself another option. And a third one might be, controversially, that you ask people out. You meet them and you ask them out on a date. So all of a sudden you're looking at much more chances. You're paying attention to yourself and the kind of other people that you're looking at. You're maximizing your possibilities with dating websites, and you're also then looking at other ways you can put yourself in front of potential matches for relationships. So are you getting a sense now of how we kind of apply this principle to all these different situations? And of course, you can also apply this principle to relationships, whether you've got a good relationship that you'd like to be better, or if you're struggling with a relationship and you'd like to heal that, then you can apply it as well. And I won't cover it specifically in this video, but I'm sure you can get a gist of that. And again, as I say, if you want to share in the comments below, I can help see how we might brainstorm what might be relevant there. What I'd like to do now is share an example of something where the principle just doesn't just apply. It's actually incredibly brutal in terms of you absolutely get punished if you miss one of them out. And this relates to online selling. So I'm going to put you in the driving seat again. Please imagine that you're running an online shop. More specifically, you're running a clothes store. You're selling clothes online. So it's not just a case of the more truths you include, the greater your chances of success. This is actually a very harsh environment from that point of view, in that if you miss a single truth, your chances of results are absolutely down to zero. So let's go through it. The first thing you need to do is you need to get traffic to your website, right? You can't sell if people don't visit your website. So that's the first thing. So let's say you take care of that. You've got that covered. Some advertising or something brings in traffic to your website. The second thing is, how do they find the products that they're looking for on your website? Well, it's no good you just bringing people to your website, but if they can't find the actual product that they're looking for, then they're going to go elsewhere and find it from some other website, some other company. Maybe you use, as part of your advertising, you drop them specifically on the page of the product that they're looking to buy, and that might be one way of covering it. Or another one might be that you have a good search function to do that. So you can take care of those, but then you need to have some information in the description so that people have got the information they need to know what it is that they're buying. So that is necessary as well as the first two. And you need all of those in place. Then let's consider a first element. All those have to be in place, a fourth element, sorry, which is the product image. So if you get people to your website and they find the right product and they can read all the information that they need to read to know what they're purchasing, but the image is terrible, or there isn't an image, or let's say it's just average, it's not going to inspire them to make a purchase. So you need to make sure that that box is ticked as well. Otherwise, any of these things so far, if you just miss a single one or you do them badly, it's going to totally wipe your chance of making that sale, and therefore of your business succeeding. So we're talking about clothes. So another thing is, if you forget to put a size guide on there, people might have all the things that they need. They've found your product, they have the right picture, they got the information, but they don't know how your size guide works. They're not going to buy clothes that way. So that's another thing that has to be there for you to avoid losing the sale. So it's not just you can include 3 or 4 of these 5 things. You've got to make sure all 5 things are there, or you're going to blow your chances out of the water. Sixth thing is price. If your price is too high, that possibly even too low in some industries, in some niches, the price being too low might blow your chances as well. So that's got to be right. So let's say you've got all those things correct, but then people can't find the checkout button because you haven't designed your website well enough. So that again could be something that scuppers the sale. So let's say you've got that in place. Okay. What's your refunds policy? People are going to want to know what the refunds policy is. Unless they know that, they're not going to make a purchase. So that needs to be there as well. Another thing is, almost finally, is postage price. So if someone's on your website, they're not going to buy something, even if all those other things from the traffic coming in, finding the right product, the description, the picture, size guide, price, all of that stuff being there. If they don't know what your refunds policy is, if they don't know what your postage is, then again they're going to, well, I'm not sure I'm going to go ahead through the checkout and might get hit with a massive postage fine. So I think I'll probably leave it. You see, so you're losing there. So all 9 of those things are important. That if you don't have those ticked, if you don't have those in order, you're going to lose the sale. And you could add a 10th to that, which is your page load speed. This is how harsh this industry might be. You could have all 9 of those things that you do fantastically well, and then you have a website that takes 10 or 11 seconds to load every page. People are going to go elsewhere, so you've lost the sale. So another example to share is a YouTube channel, and in particular I can share from my own YouTube channel. So there are lots of different truths that need to be applied, and if you look at some of my earlier videos, you can see some of them weren't applied too well, which is why you probably won't find them if I've deleted them, because the audio quality was not so good, the video quality was not so good. So all of these things need to be addressed to make sure that you're getting the best quality that you can. On YouTube, people might live with the video quality being not so good. Again, unless it's sports, then they're using YouTube for the pictures. But most of the time, if the audio quality is okay, then people will forgive poor picture quality, poor visual quality. But there are also other conditions as well. So lots of different factors go into this. So you're thinking about the setup of your scene. You're talking about yourself, how you speak, how you plan a video. That's important as well. Some things like lighting. You've got to make sure that you're well lit up if you're going to be doing a video like this. So I have some light already to this side of me, but on this side I'd have, if you see the difference, if I go over there, you can see the difference. If I didn't bother to put a light to this side of me, then that would be affecting. So all these things would have reduced the quality to have not improved. You can see we've got a proper Rode microphone here. It's going to help with the audio quality. So again, you're looking at how many truths can you include in your approach to success with a YouTube channel, and you'll find that there's a lot of factors that can be addressed, and if you address them, you can create great quality in every aspect. Now I'd like to introduce you to something fantastic for helping you to engage and fulfill your potential, and that's called Integral Life Practice, or ILP for short. So to understand what that is, first of all, you need to understand what life practice is. Okay, so let's start with the idea of having a music coach or a sports coach. So let's say somebody that you see every week, and they teach you how to play a musical instrument, or they teach you how to be good at some sport or whatever, golf, doesn't matter, whatever it is. Okay, so that's your coaching. They're teaching you how to do that. Well, between seeing them, you will go home and you'll practice on your own, right? If it's a musical instrument, you will practice playing that instrument. If it's golf or some other sport, you'll practice that. So you have a relationship between the coaching and the practice. Now, if you apply that to personal development, people are familiar with the idea of life coaching, but not so familiar with the idea of life practice. Well, this just works in the same way. As you do some form of practice. You might be working on your physical body, might be working with your mind, it might be working with your spirit. Maybe you do meditation every day or something else. So these kinds of activities are your life practice, which may complement life coaching, or you might just be doing life practice on its own. So integral life practice is, by the way, all of these things that we've been learning today has come from integral theory, integral philosophy, which I've learned from Ken Wilber. And integral life practice is something that he created with 3 other colleagues. You can get a handbook for that. And in particular, again, we're applying this principle. So it's the more truths you include in your approach to any given situation, the greater your chances of success. So the point here is we're talking about fulfilling your potential. So how can you be the best human being that you can be? So let's start with the idea of mind, body, spirit. What integral life practice does is have 9 modules that they work on, but in particular I want to focus on 4 modules that they call their core modules. And those are mind, body, spirit, and shadow. So, of course, we all know what the mind and body are. And then spirit, essentially the spirit module is about disidentifying with your body and your mind, that empirical self, and you're taking the perspective of the witness, as you might do in meditation. So you're creating an awareness of the freedom that you exist in, rather than being too strictly bound by the identification with your ego self, let's say. So you might be getting too attached to status or relationships or self-image or any of that kind of stuff. One thing that spiritual practice and meditation does is help you to separate from that and disidentify and recognize that you're not actually bound to those things specifically. So that creates some freedom there. But also, they haven't just done that. They've also, as you can see, you go from mind, body, spirit. They've added the shadow aspect or the element, and this is related to Carl Jung. So you're doing shadow work to reclaim, rather than just disidentifying with your mind, body, self. You're actually looking to reclaim those parts where that mind and body have been shut down by your conditioning. And so this is what makes ILP incredibly powerful. It's something that I've done formally and informally for the last about 15 years or so, mostly informally, but also formally. We used to travel to London every month to take part in integral life practice sessions, 2 hours. We'd do 30 minutes on the mind module, 30 minutes on the body module, 30 minutes on the spirit module, 30 minutes on the shadow module. So that's something that you really might want to bear in mind if you are interested in becoming the best person you can be and fulfilling all of your potential in this life. And particularly related to that, what I'd like to offer you finally to help with that is the first 2 chapters of the Kissing Consciousness book, absolutely free, because they relate to this shadow work. Essentially, that's what Kissing Consciousness does. It helps us to get from a state of fear consciousness to a state of love consciousness, or from self-judgment and self-constriction to a state of self-acceptance. And this is, in a sense, this is the primary, most classic example that there is of the application of the integral success principle. Because what you're talking about in terms of achievement is the difference between mechanics and psychology. So this is a well-known, well-understood principle in life coaching and personal development, is that it's not just about the mechanics of what you do in order to be successful. If you've got psychology blocks that are stopping you because you were brought up with the idea that money's evil, or that you can't have a relationship that's more happy than the one your parents had, or you're something to do with your body, you're not allowed to be embodied or anything like that, that is about the biggest aspect of applying the success principle that there can be, which is why I've oriented Kissing Consciousness around it. And so I'd like to offer you the first 2 chapters of the book. Here's the Kissing Consciousness handbook, and that's really going to get you into the first chapter is going to explain all about the difference between living in stuckness and living in the flow, and the second one will cover the power of love. So again, that's going to be talking about the difference between the fear consciousness state of self-judgment and self-constriction, and the love consciousness state of self-allowance and self-acceptance. And that then leads on to something that I call human file permissions, because it doesn't matter what you do mechanically, if your psychology, if your file permissions, your human file permissions are a no, because your mind and your nervous system as well has been shut down to the idea of achieving success in some area, then it doesn't make any difference what you do in mechanics. You'll find a way to sabotage that. So this is the biggest thing I think that we can do in life for success, is to make sure we haven't got any programs that are sabotaging our success. We get those out of the way. And this is in line with the principle that you, in terms of success, you get out of your own way. This is what this is all about. And so with my compliments, I'd like you to have that. If you just follow the link below, kissingconsciousness.com/chapters, and you can get those 2 chapters for free. That'll really get you into the way Kissing Consciousness works. And in particular, we talk about mechanics and psychology. What Kissing Consciousness recognizes is not just psychology, it's physiology as well. So these blocks, these no permissions, you want to be clearing them from your mind, but also from your physiology, from your nervous system itself, so that there's freedom in both mind and body for you to then go out and do what it is that you need to do in order to be successful. Okay, that was a load of stuff today. Please, if you've got any questions, ask them in the comments below. I'll help and explain anything that you'd like me to, or help with any kind of brainstorming on any topics that you're looking at. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again.